Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of All Things Games. Today, we're going to continue to talk about gamification in the classroom with children, and we're going to talk about ways to engage them in discourse about equity, diversity, and inclusiveness. And the most powerful methods we found to use with children that are, again, easy for you to produce as a teacher are to use card games. So I'm going to show you an example of a card game, a trailer for a card game produced by my graduate student, now a PhD student at Toronto Metro University named Annie Lee. And this was work that she did out of the goodness of her heart to support Masquishis Cultural College. Masquishis Cultural College is located in Alberta, Canada. It's located on a reservation. It now is extensively an e-campus, but they were located on the reservation. And these students that were attending our classes virtually here began to do so during COVID. So a lot of faculty from around the world were in touch with Manisha Ketrapal. And Manisha is the Dean of Library Science at Masquishis at the Reserve. And so she had a large network of connection. We began to teach this approach to what do you do with children when you're online to teach them and keep them engaged? And so for the past 5 years, we've been involved in different projects. So what you're going to see in the next little clip is a card game we produced. And I'll give you the beta on the card game, but this was produced in order to give children or adults a sense of what it was like to live in Canada during the what was called the Great Scoop, which was the residential school system. So if you want to increase sensitivity and awareness about First Nations in Canada, we, of course, were working under the direction of Masquishis College. All of the photographs you've seen are really from the 1920s, and they're from their extensive library collection with full permission of elders to use them for education. And the card game that you see was produced on an application called Canva. But you can produce a card game on your own. But we worked extensively, and the way we built this game is we had Indigenous students come up with the storyline and come up with the card design. So we were designing the cards online, and the students were online in Alberta. We were in Toronto, and they were advising us, and they built the game with us. So having Indigenous students actually build the game or lead the workshop is the most powerful way to do it. In fact, it's hard to do it with integrity any other way. But you can teach any subject with integrity as long as there is respectful approaches to looking at things like indigeneity. So let's have a quick look at this. Sorry, we're fiddling around a little bit here. So except for a minor glitch at the beginning, um, this game was designed originally by the elder at Toronto Metropolitan University, who sits on the Senate. Her name is Joanne Gillard. And Joanne is Cree. She had an interesting background, as I understand it, in social work and working on the streets. And she now advises the chief advisor to the university as how to connect with Indigenous community. And of course, there are many Indigenous faculty as well. This is a basic game in which you play a role. So it's a role-playing game. So again, I want you to think of this as a game you can use for any subject. We're using this one because it's a difficult subject to teach properly. So in the game, as you saw as the cards went by, there's a deck of cards in which you have to play a part in the game. And Joanne has been doing this for adult audiences for years. So we simply took her game concept and we imported it for children. So this isn't my original design, it's hers. And she's not a game designer. That shows you how easy it is to just simply come up with a game idea to teach something. So my role might be I chose a child. There's about 6 or 7 roles. And what is happening is you get situation cards. So suppose I'm playing the part of a 6-year-old child who's Indigenous in the late 1920s. And at that time, of course, you were still hunting and you were still gathering herbs. but there were some terrible restrictions. So one situation card is this, that the government agents have come to your house and they've said they'll be back in 2 months to take you and your brother away to a residential school. What do you do? Put yourself in that position. Now, everyone that's playing the game, preferably in a small group of about 5 or 6, each one is playing a different role. The card that you could have drawn would have been the father. So what would you do as a father if you knew the government agents would be coming back? And then we can use this as a point of discussion because government agents did not speak Cree at the time. So you didn't even know what they were saying. And they had you sign documents which kind of gave your children away. And they didn't even know what they were signing because they didn't even know what was being spoken to them. And when they came to pick you up in a residential school, they would send the RCMP with them. It wasn't a gentle visit by the priest. The priest brought firepower with them. So now as a father, what do you do? Are you going to resist? What do you do with your 16-year-old kid? Now, suppose you have a 16-year-old teenager. Are they going to tell them to run away or are they going to go? So suddenly you're immersed in role playing what it would have been like there. And we've got different roles. There's the mother, the father, and all the pictures in the cards were from legitimate files that, again, were released with permission from us with Shees. So imagine having your kids design a deck of cards in which they have to play a role or a character, and you give them socially conflictual or difficult things to look at. So this one was looking at the residential school system. Suppose you wanted to teach something about inclusivity and skin color, which is a big project we just finished with Tesia Stemp from Memorial University in Newfoundland here in Canada. And her co-worker, Jamie, her last name is killing me at that slow moment, but she's a Montessori instructor from Las Vegas. So we did a year-long project with my graduate student, Debbie Klachuk, who's now about to start a PhD in game design. And what we essentially did was told a story about nature, or in order to immerse students in a world. And part of their experiences were watching videos about skin color and diversity. So what we're going to do when we produce a card game is produce your character, put your character in a situation where perhaps a new kid has arrived at school to join a rock and roll band and they have red hair and no one wants to let them in the band because they have red hair. I think you can do these things in a gentle way without going into obvious discriminatory practices that produces a kind of negative ambience around the game. And so you can have all of the kids playing different roles or giving their opinion about what they think about that idea. Play them as members of the band. What do you think? Do you think you should let them in? Why wouldn't you let them in? And these then serve as discussion points as well. So you can do a lot of teaching about the subject of, well, some people have brown parents, some people have black parents, some people are Jewish, some people are Catholics. So you can build this diversity, again, through playing a card game in which you have to play a character. And we're going to conclude this short video by letting you know what the research says on diversity training. And this is from the former Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Toronto Metropolitan University. I'm no longer at that university, but a good deal of my work in early gamification research was there, Denise O'Green. And Denise made me aware that there's only a 13 to 15% success rate on diversity training in the corporate workplace. So all the money you're spending on diversity and officers and HR policies isn't really amounting to a hill of beans. What has worked, when it has worked, is something where you identify with through some kind of empathetic experience with the actor. So we did a project with the Durham Police Force on carding about 7 or 8 years ago. And the idea was that they were looking at kids that are out late at night in groups, and there was a big tendency to stop a group of black kids or brown kids way more likely than just all white kids hanging out at a mall at 3 a.m. So and even the members of the officers who were of color themselves felt that they had to work harder than the police next to them. So diversity training is very, very real. The need for it is quite pressing. It still continues. And so the game, basically, what we learned is the empathetic experience, where you play the part of the kid who's about to be carded, and you go through as a police officer knowing how you would feel if you were being carded and singled out. And when they card, they might go through your pockets, they can do a search, and you can raise your rights all you want, but at 3 a.m., if it's you and a police officer, the police officer has the trump card. So how does it feel to be that victimized? And suppose they found a tiny bit of a banned substance. In the old days, it would have been marijuana. And then they put you in handcuffs and throw you in the cruiser to put you through a half hour of questioning in the cruiser. So these empathy building games are much more effective than what they do in corporate training, where they might give some biography of discrimination, but you don't actually get to experience it. Um, so I would urge you to take your next step in gamification in the classroom beyond the early steps we've talked about in previous videos about creating an action adventure game, to build a card game in which they have to play a character and then formulate how they feel and would react in a situation if they were that character. These kinds of games are so exciting, kids will not want to stop playing. Next time, we'll talk a little bit more about how to add other games to the classroom experience and to use some creative problem-solving games that your kids are going to just beg for more. The best thing about going into using gamification in the classroom, it is the first time in my career, which spans some 40 years in education, where my college students came up to me and said, "Please, sir, can we have some more quizzes and exams?" How that happened, we'll talk about next time. David Chandra signing.